For those who don't know what permaculture is, I'm going to give you a little bit of an intro. We're going to go through a quick history, how to apply it, tropical appliques, how you can apply it to food, home, community, all in 10 minutes, or I'll try. So to start us off, let's do a quick little hi. My name's Kenton Zerbin, very passionate educator. I left the school system because I didn't think preparing kids for tomorrow. So I had to start walking the talk, and I traveled around the world learning from some of the world's best, building food forests for communities, starting a school for permaculture in Barbados, building my own off-grid tiny house. Come and talk to me later, we can nerd out about tiny homes, and building food forests for communities and clients. However, I quickly saw the limits of my capabilities at the design level and building homes and building food forests, and I came back to my roots to teach. This is what I think is the biggest way we can change the world. All of the world's problems are through education. That makes education also the universal solution. Think of a problem in the world. I challenge you, and see if you can find a way that education cannot fix it. So what is permaculture? Well, let's start with some basic biology. If you open a Biology 30 textbook, you'll find 3 types of relationships between organisms. You'll see this one as a countless example, right? Bees and the flowers, they evolve together. They both are getting this beneficial relationship, and they co-evolve together, and they will continue to do so. This is called mutualism. There's a second type called commensalism, where one organism gets a clear benefit, and the other one is kind of like, it's fair, go on, commence. What's funny about this is if you actually press a biologist to give you a concrete example of commensalism, they have a hard time. Because, for example, you might say, oh, the bird gets a house, it gets food, it gets shelter, it gets all these things. What's the tree get? Well, if you look at the microtransactions, every time a bird takes off in flight or lands, that's actually usually when it shits. And that would drop down and then feed the root system of that tree. So I don't think there's that many examples of commensalism. And the last is parasites, where one of the organism gets a clear plus and another one gets a negative. Now, the hard question that I have for you here today is currently, if we were to look at the planet as one organism and humans as another, which category do we fit in?
We're parasites.
Just by behavior alone. Now, is that our nature? I don't think so. How then can we move from this relationship over to mutualism? And that is how permaculture really began. With this man, Bill Mollison, in the 1970s, he saw clear cutting of forests, the big boats coming in and fishing out the oceans, and the loss of his livelihood also as a millwright. And he was going, we're doing something wrong. And so what he did is he started to study indigenous peoples around the world and found commonalities at how they grew food. Things like watershed management, nutrient cycling, and stacking assemblies of plants together in time and space so they manage themselves. And he put those concepts in a book called Permaculture 1, and it took off. This is around the time that DDT was going on, wartime chemical. Yeah, lots of bad stuff was going on, and people were going, holy crap, this guy's got answers. So permaculture took off then and has been thriving ever since. Still, let's give you a definition. Permaculture is a design science. Everything we're doing is repeatable, explainable, that is guided by ethics, right? We really have to justify and ground into that we need to not be a parasite. So I can teach you stuff that are permaculture techniques to harvest water or build a food forest, but if you use that to take more out of the land without giving back to it, that's not permaculture. So ethic-driven. And it's inspired by nature. That nature is the ultimate designer. Trillions of experiments. Think about a forest, for example. It self-propagates, self-fertilizes, self-waters. Why don't we copy it for a food-growing system? Instead, we clear it, and we force it to function in a way that nature never would. You would never find modern agriculture happening on its own. We built work in. So that's called a food forest. So one of the permaculture pinnacles of this is a good example of how to do landscape design for meeting the needs of humanity and to the benefit of the environment. So I know it's a little bit long-winded, but it does a good job at keeping certain things out, and it does a good job at saying, yeah, there's a lot that can fit in here. So let's give you guys examples and apply it. I'm going to show you now 3 core concepts of how you can be a permaculture designer. And this is an incredibly empowering thing to do. We are all designers. The same way an artist can pick up a pencil and put it to a piece of paper, and we say, oh, some people are artists. No, as soon as you put that pencil down to the paper, you made a decision. And as a decision maker in that moment, you are an artist. The same goes with our landscapes. When you put a tomato plant in, when you put your house in a location, when you put a tree here, when you put yourself within a community, you can design connections by placement alone. And therefore, you're a designer. So let's teach you about design. There are 3 core concepts. The first is called sectors. Work with the natural flows of energy. Don't work against nature. Nature always wins. The second is called zones. It's more like feng shui, to quickly explain it. You got to design for human efficiency. And the third is relationships. The placement of things together for the benefits they have better together. A good example of this would be companion planting. For those who are gardeners in the room, you put your marigolds next to your tomatoes and they help keep the bugs away from your tomatoes. Or if you want to reference the Three Sisters planting combination of indigenous peoples of the north, planting corn and peas and a crawling species across the ground, the 3 are better together. One supplying nitrogen for the other providing a climbing thing for the peas to go up, and the one going across the ground sheltering the soil. Better together. Okay, let's jump in. I should also mention, this is a pattern to detail thing. Often people, when they start designing systems, they get excited, like, oh, I'm going to put my chickens next to my compost. They're like, oh, it's going to look great, because the chickens are going to run around and they're going to grab the flies, and the stuff inside the chicken will go inside the compost. Yeah, you can design connections, that's great. But if you didn't put it in a place for your easy access, for efficiency, and furthermore, if you didn't put it in the right location relative to the wind and the sun and the water, it will fail or not work. So start here, to here, to here. And there's humility in this. As soon as something's work, it's good feedback. It's a feedback mechanism. Why does this work? Design the work out. So the main sectors, the sun, wind, and water. I love teaching about the sun. Oh my gosh, there's so many ways we're not educated about today. Every culture worth a damn studied, deified, and celebrated the sun cycles. And today you can turn to most people and say, point east. And they're like, you know, we're not really connected with it because we don't grow our own food. Many people do. But as soon as you have to grow food, the sun becomes a very, very important thing. Because sunlight translated into food. That's how that works. Here is an example of how the sun moves across the sky in a northern place in the hemisphere. Who here is from the States, Canada, Northern Hemisphere? We got a lot. Right? So this is incredibly important. To know this angle, it will change the awning size on your house, the placements of your windows, the placements of your tomato relative to your house, because one side will get more shade, for example, or sun. Everything is going to relate to the sun, so you have to think, where is it moving through the sky at different times of the year? Here's an example house set up so that its awnings, windows, and solar panels are orientated towards the sun, making the house more efficient and comfortable. What don't we start applying that to the tropics? So when you get between the tropics of Capricorn and Cancer, you get a pattern that looks more like this. You get that nice 6 p.m. and 6 a.m. with sunrise, sunset, which is so nice, right? Well, it still applies to home design. Of course it does. How do we keep our homes now protected from the sun? Maybe we want a couple hours of the morning sun coming in. Well, the length, again, of an awning will determine whether that sunlight gets past it to enter your window to come into your house. And if you design it wrong, you will spend more on AC trying to keep the house cool. It's so simple in a way, and yet it gets missed even by professional architects about how we can do simple things, such as awnings, such as a simple tree placement, that will make the house better at being a house. Here's an example. Even this one, this is actually a great example of just very simple heat dynamics. If your house is orientated from north to south, you have a lot of wall surface that's facing east and west. And for majority of the day, the sun is rising and pounding into that wall, gets past this point, and now it's pounding into the west wall. So a house orientated towards east to west is more efficient in this place of the world. Simple, but a little thing like that makes a huge difference. What about the wind? Now, again, going to northern places of the world, we have to really be careful on the wind because it can siphon away the heat from our homes. So use things like shelter belts. And you'll see these all the time around people in the countryside. They got more room and they'll plant all these trees around the house. To break that wind, to make the house more efficient, you can increase or decrease your heating costs by 30 to 40% just by one line of trees. And yet, where's all the trees around people's homes? Now, in the tropics, you don't want to break that wind, right? You guys are probably loving it, right? You feeling it? There's a little bit of breeze coming through here. Good design, by the way. Yeah. Good job. Well, we don't want to put trees up that are going to be a dense mass that are going to stop that wind, unless we want to use them like a wind tunnel. For example, you could do your landscaping with a V facing the predominant wind direction. You would actually pick up wind speeds. Put your house on the other side of that V, and now you have more air conditioning naturally. Do you see what I mean about power replacement? But sectors first. Where's the wind coming from? Same goes with even a valley system. Cold air falls. Well, just like water, it's like gravity, right? It's denser, it's heavier. Gravity's pulled on it. You can siphon air moving down a valley system using trees so it hits your house. Change the direction of it. In this example, we're selecting species which stay clear on the bottom, allowing air still to pass through, but yielding shade. This can be a wind and a heat relating thing for placement. Here's another example. What about water? Now, water is where we get really exciting. Now, I don't know about you guys, but as a kid, I was that guy out in the rain. I was pushing water around in the gutters and like making it go through the mud and that's fun. And when we look at a landscape, water is always going to take the path of least resistance. Therefore, while you can't change the angle of the sun, can't change the predominant wind directions very easily, you can change water. You can present a path of a little less resistance and suddenly create power systems, life systems, fire protection systems, temperature moderation systems, food growing systems. All of these things require water. Water is incredibly powerful. And we as a designer can remove it from destructive potential and put it into productive potential. Here's a good rendering to show you an example of contour planning, where you plant and you plan your access ways and therefore also your house placements on contour so water can get to your structures, away from your structures, stay high up on the landscape for energetic potential, and be applied to life systems. I always say like a marble maze. Again, going back to being a kid, like your job as a water designer is to make this marble of water take as long a path as possible. Here's an example of it applied. Okay, so sectors. Zones is a little easier to explain. As I said, it's human energy. How do we make things more efficient as human users? And we build by placing the things we need to engage with more often closer. It's not really good English, but oftenest, nearest. Explains it in 2 words. So zone 0 is your house. Zone 1, where you can grow upwards of 80% of your food if you're dedicated. Zone 2, now you start placing things that don't need to be seen every day. Zone 3 is the last area you intensively manage. Zone 4 would be where you forage, maybe some pasture. And then zone 5 you leave alone because you still need nature as a teacher. And you need to leave places for relaxation, inspiration, education, not try to manage all. Lastly is relationships, and this is where the magic happens. We get like matchmakers. You can do some Dr. Phil stuff here, where you can place 2 things together and be like, look at these crazy connections that happen. I'm going to give you some examples. So the classic one we talk about in permaculture is the chicken. Often we look at the chicken and we go, you do great. I like your eggs. Or maybe I like your meat. And we go, okay, I'll grow you and you can get these things. Good, awesome. But that is so narrow-minded. That's kind of like looking at someone and saying, oh, you're a computer programmer? Cool, that's all you're good for. Keep doing that, good job. No, everything has multiple functions and we make things more efficient when we give them more jobs. So we can look at anything intrinsically, say a chicken, and say, oh, you produce poop. And it's actually great for the garden. I should use that yield. Oh, you use scratching behaviors. And if you don't design for it, they will quickly degrade an area of land if you leave them on the same spot, because they're always scratching it up looking for bugs. Well, you can put that to use. Say you want to plant a tree. Say you want to plant a garden. You make a chicken tractor, it's called. It's a little mobile unit on wheels where they have access to the ground, and they will scratch the ground, de-weed it, debug it, de-seed it, fertilize it, and then you move it over and you plant a garden. It's a heck of a lot less work than doing it yourself. Do you see how I power connection right there? There's an example of chicken tractor. And these come large, by the way. There's a guy named Joel Salatin, based out of the States, called himself the Mad Farmer. He built these gigantic chicken tractors. Hundreds of chickens. And what he does is he moves cattle through a pasture, then moves the cattle onto the next pasture, brings in the chicken tractors. The chickens run around, scratch apart all the cow patties, eat all the maggots, getting free protein, and spread the fertilizer out for them. He's not growing cows, he's growing grass. He gets a byproduct of cow and chicken. Stacking things in time and space for relationships. Tropical examples. Let's give you a few more. A good example where we don't give something enough power, when we give it power. One job, but it can be two. It yields shade. Why don't we have solar panels over every one of our windows? They're awnings. They're also incredibly clean, smooth surfaces. Great for water collection. There's 3 jobs in one. Or grow food over your windows. Putting plants out your windows when the air comes in. Trees and plants sweat, same way we do. They cool the air. So by placing it by a window and knowing the predominant wind direction, you can get natural AC before you turn on the real AC. I'll give you one more food example for the tropics. This is a really cool one called a banana circle. And the idea is you dig a pit and you move all the dirt from the pit around the outside to make a donut. You plant your bananas in there and you keep training them because they always keep sending out suckers just to keep going around the donut. And then you throw all your organic matter from all your landscaping and from your kitchen in the middle, and you take a sink or a shower or water from your landscape and pour it into the middle. And now you have a lot of nutrient for these heavy feeder plants, a composting pile that doesn't need management. And you use your gray water. You see how I'm trying to make these connections here for you? This also applies to community. It's been happening in spades this whole event, which is why I love this place so much already. Is people are the same way. You can plug people together for different connections. This is the essence of community. The word community means the small and local exchanges that link us together. And we each have needs, and we each have yields. And so we should plug into those people, an immediate little network. I love it. I'm talking about BNI networks, so I was having a conversation with you yesterday about that. Oh, the idea of like 25 people together going, what do we need as a community, as a little network? Oh, cool, we need more food. Cool, let's bring someone into this little network. And that one person can meet the other 25s for food. What do we need next? Oh, we need a barber. Oh, we need a doctor. We need a nurse. What a beautiful way to start a community. You can do anything, but you can't do everything. It's a great quote to remember. Okay, that's the basics of permaculture design. I'm going to give you a few quick examples, and then we're going to open the floor for some Q&A in case there is any. I'm going to show you my tiny house really quick. Here it is. Off-grid tiny house, 260 square feet. The whole thing is solar panels that fold up, hot water heating system on the front of it as well. This is in cold Edmonton, Alberta, where it got built. We now live just outside Kelowna, British Columbia, Canada. There's the inside. Come talk to me later and I'll show you all sorts of pictures and nerd out all about tiny homes if you wish. I was able to build it for under $100,000 and it completely transformed my life. I have a house on wheels that's mobile that allows me to live and travel and do whatever I want without the encumberment of money. I was able to feed my business until it was successful. In terms of permaculture design applied though, I want to show you, I think I missed a picture there. Yeah, with the arrows. There is just under 2,000 liters of water inside the house. Power placement. Water has a yield. Temperature stability. When you put water inside your house and your house gets hot or cold, it acts like a buffer. So this way, I can light my little wood stove, and rather than getting a really hot sauna house, it actually ends up heating the water in the house, and there's a balancing in the temperature inside. Power placement. Let's give you another one in the house. This is called an HRV. It brings in fresh air. By the power of placement, I put my dishes here, and it's my dish dryer. Because it can yield that for us. I want to give you an inspiring example of an outdoor classroom that I built in Edmonton, where they needed a space to teach children about food. So we built an orchard system around the entire field for the kids to wander around and eat from, and an outdoor edible classroom here with a sundial patio and garden beds. Here's the sundial, herb spiral thing. So this pole here tells them when in the year by shadow on the patio so they can learn about the sun. And then they've got food all around the outside, which also acts like a bench. Got little seats on it. Okay. Last example, and then I'm off. Community trading. You guys ever heard of the red paperclip?
Yeah.
Something from nothing. There's a guy who went from like a paperclip to a house. And I call it like a dozen trades. The idea is that one person's junk is another person's treasure, right? So they traded, and I decided to take this like same idea, and I went from a red paperclip to a big pen, to an electrocuting pen, to a Sudoku book. This is just me going to someone and saying, hey, I've got this thing, want to trade? Give me something bigger, better, help me along on this journey. The whole idea was to get to a tool trailer to build edible landscapes for people. Bring tools to communities. Chest freezer, tablet, snow blower, quad, and then quad for tool trailer. I started with a big pen. This is an example of community. All right. Thank you guys so much for your time. If you're interested, come and chat me up. We're launching an online community for education to teach other people how to become permaculture designers. It's called Attainable Sustainable Academy. I want to leave you with this one quote. Never doubt that a small group of people, committed and thoughtful, can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has. Thank you.